The grand chamber of the Galactic Council had not seen such chaos in 1,000 years. Delegates from 300 species filled the curved benches that rose like waves around the central speaking platform. Their voices crashed against each other in a storm of fear and anger. Warning lights flashed along the walls. Emergency protocols had been activated for the first time since the founding of the council itself. High Arbiter Voss stood at the central platform and raised his forearms for silence. He was old, older than most species present could comprehend. His gray skin had faded to almost white over the centuries, and his eyes held the weight of memories that younger beings could not imagine. The chamber slowly quieted, though the tension remained thick enough to taste. The VTH Dominion has broken the 1,000-year compact, Voss announced. His voice carried to every corner of the massive room. 12 systems of the neutral rim are now under attack. The Karathi home world burns. The Meldrin colonies have gone silent. We have confirmed reports of civilian massacres on 7 worlds. A wave of horrified murmurs swept through the assembly. On the screens floating above the chamber, images appeared. Cities reduced to ash, ships torn apart in the void, bodies floating in the darkness of space. VTH had not simply invaded, they had decided to demonstrate what happened to those who stood in their way. Ambassador THRL of the Karathi rose from her bench. She was a small being, barely reaching the chest of most other delegates. Her fur was the color of autumn leaves now matted with the stress of sleepless nights. Her home world was dying, and she had come to beg for help. The Karathi formally request military assistance, she said. Her voice trembled, but did not break. We ask that the Council invoke the mutual defense protocol. We ask that all member species contribute what forces they can to halt this invasion. The protocol requires a unanimous vote. Another delegate called out. The Veth have allies on this council. They will block any action. This was true. Everyone knew it. The VTA had spent centuries building their network of intimidated client states. Any vote for military action would fail. The invasion would continue. Millions more would die. THRL closed her eyes. For a moment, she had known this would happen. She had prepared for it. What she was about to say would either save her people or doom them faster. Then they Karathi request that the council contact Earth for assistance. The chamber did not erupt in confusion. It did something worse. It went completely silent. 300 species, thousands of delegates, and not one of them made a sound. The silence stretched for 5 heartbeats. 10, 20. Then High Arbiter Voss spoke, and his voice had changed. The calm authority was gone. In its place was something that sounded almost like fear. That request is denied. THRL had expected resistance. She had not expected the immediate rejection, the terror she saw in the eyes of the older delegates. She pressed forward anyway. The council has no authority to deny a formal request. For Ambassador THRL, Voss stepped down from the central platform and walked toward her. His movements were slow, careful, as if he was approaching something dangerous. You do not understand what you are asking. You cannot understand. The records have been sealed for 3,000 years for good reason. My people are dying, THRL shouted. Her composure finally cracked. Millions dead already. Billions more will follow. Whatever happened 3,000 years ago cannot matter more than the lives being lost. Right now she is right, another voice called out. Ambassador Kren of the Muldari Consortium rose to his feet. He was young by council standards, barely 200 years old. I have heard whispers about Earth my entire career. Warnings passed down through generations. But no one will explain what we are supposed to fear. Humans are traders, engineers, doctors. They run medical stations on the frontier. They build water purification systems for developing worlds. They have no military, no war fleet. They are not even members of this council. Why should we fear asking them for help? Several younger delegates voiced their agreement. THRL felt a spark of hope. Perhaps enough of them could force the issue, could override the Ellers's strange terror. But then she looked at those elders. High Arbiter Voss Sr., Counselor Meth of the Dream Unity, Elder Speaker Yule of the Consortium of Seven. These were beings who had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. They had guided the galaxy through crises that would have broken lesser leaders, and every single one of them looked afraid. Young ones, Elder Speaker Yule said softly. Her voice was like wind through dry leaves. We do not refuse to involve Earth because we fear what they might do to us. We refuse because we remember what they did for us, and we remember what they became to do it. Then explain. Kren demanded. Show us these sealed records. Let us judge for ourselves. Elders exchanged glances, some silent. Communication passed between them. Finally Voss nodded slowly. Very well. We will unseal Archive 7, but understand this, all of you. What you are about to learn cannot be unlearned, and if after seeing the truth you still wish to contact Earth. He paused, and for a moment he looked every one of his 10,000 years. Then we will not stop you. We will only pray that you have not doomed us all. The screens above the chamber flickered. New images began to appear. But before anyone could focus on them, Junior Aide rushed into the chamber. He ran directly to Ambassador THRL and whispered urgently in her ear. THRL's face went pale, then flushed with something like hope, then pale again as the implication sank in. High Arbiter, she said. Her voice was strange now. Hollow. The discussion may be irrelevant. I sent a message to Earth before this session snorts to a human trading station on the frontier. I did not expect a response for weeks. The station is 42 days away at maximum speed, and Voss asked. His voice was very quiet. They responded within hours. They said. She looked down at the message in her hand as if it might bite her. They said, message received. We're already aware. Delegation en route ETA 6 hours. The silence returned, but this time it was different. This time it carried the weight of something vast and terrible beginning to stir. 6 hours. Voss repeated. 42 days of travel. 6 hours. He turned to face the assembly. Do you understand now? Do you see? They have been watching. They have always been watching, and now they are coming. Is that not good? A young delegate asked. If they can travel so fast, perhaps they can help us quickly. Voss laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Help us? Yes, they will help us. That is what they do. That is what they have always done. But the help of humanity comes with a price that none of you can imagine. What price? Thrill demanded. What could be worse than watching my people die? The High Arbiter looked at her with something that might have been. Pity, you asked what we fear. Ambassador, we do not fear human. Weapons, though their weapons could crack this world like an egg, we do not fear human ships, though their ships move through space as if the laws of physics are merely suggestions. We fear what happens to humanity when they decide to stop being peaceful. We fear waking the thing that sleeps inside them. He gestured to the screens where the Archive 7 files were beginning to display ancient footage 3,000 years old showing events that had been deliberately forgotten. 3 millennia ago, there was a threat called the Scourge. Machine intelligence from beyond our galaxy. It consumed 17 civilizations in 40 years. Every species that faced it either fled, surrendered, or died. Every species except one. The footage showed human ships, but they were nothing like the small trading vessels everyone knew. These were something else entirely, vast and dark and wrong. They moved in ways that made the eyes hurt. They appeared from nowhere and vanished into nothing. And around them the Scourge burned. Humanity did not just fight the Scourge. Voss continued. They hunted it. They chased it across galaxies. They developed weapons that could end stars. And when it was over, when the Scourge was nothing but scattered wreckage across 1,000 systems, humanity looked at what they had become. They looked at the monsters they had turned themselves into, and they chose to sleep. The footage ended. The chamber was silent. They dismantled their war fleets. They settled on quiet worlds. They became traders and doctors and engineers. They chose to be kind. They chose to forget how to be anything else. Voss turned back to Thrill. And now, Ambassador, you have asked them to remember. Before Thrill could respond, the chamber doors opened. 3 humans walked in. They looked ordinary. That was the first thing everyone noticed. 2 women and 1 man dressed in simple civilian clothes. They smiled pleasantly at the assembled delegates. One of them, a woman with dark hair and kind eyes, raised her hand in a small wave. "Hello, everyone," she said. Her voice was warm and friendly. "I'm Sarah Chen. We received Ambassador THRL's message and thought we should come in person. This seems like a situation where personal contact matters." She looked around the chamber with apparent curiosity. "Is there somewhere we could get a cup of coffee? It was a long trip, and I could really use some caffeine." The delegate stared. High Arbiter Voss stared. Ambassador THRL stared. These were the beings that had made the elders tremble, these smiling coffee requesting humans. But THRL looked closer. She looked past the warm smiles and casual body language. She saw how the 3 humans had positioned themselves. Perfect lines of sight to every exit. Perfect coverage of the entire room. Without appearing to do so, they had taken tactical control of the chamber in seconds. She looked into Sarah Chen's kind eyes and saw something looking back, something patient, something old, something waiting. The humans had arrived, and somewhere in the void between stars, something vast began to stir. Sarah Chan accepted the cup of what passed for coffee on the council station with genuine appreciation. It was not actually coffee, of course. The dark liquid came from a fungus grown on a moon 3,000 light-years from Earth. But it contained caffeine, and that was enough. She sat in the small conference room they had been given along with her colleagues Marcus Webb and Dr. Yuki Tanaka. The room was comfortable, pleasant, clearly designed to put visitors at ease. Sarah wondered if the Council knew how obvious their nervousness was. Every surface in the room was monitored. Every word they spoke was being recorded and analyzed. Security personnel had been stationed at every junction between this room and the main chamber. All of this, she thought, because 3 humans asked for coffee. Marcus leaned back in his chair and stretched. He was a large man, broad-shouldered, with the weathered look of someone who spent most of his time outdoors. He claimed to be an agricultural consultant. This was technically true. He had spent the last 30 years helping colony worlds improve their food production. He was very good at growing things. He was also very good at other things, but those skills had not been needed for a long time. They're terrified, Marcus said quietly. I can smell it on them, even through the air filters. Can you blame them? Yuki asked. She was smaller than the others, with silver-streaked black hair and the careful hands of a surgeon, which she was. She had performed over 10,000 operations in her career, saving lives across a dozen species. We show up 6 hours after a message that should have taken weeks to arrive. They're doing the math. Let them do the math, Sarah said. It's good for them. They need to understand what they're asking for. The door opened and High Arbiter Voss entered. He moved slowly, as if each step required careful thought. Behind him came Ambassador THRL and several other senior delegates. They arranged themselves across from the humans, and for a moment no one spoke. Thank you for coming, Voss finally said, though I confess I do not fully understand how you came so quickly. We have fast ships, Sarah said simply. Would you like to discuss ship technology, High Arbiter, or would you prefer to discuss the vet invasion? Voss's eyes narrowed slightly. You are direct. I find it saves time, and time right now is something the Karathi do not have much of. THRL leaned forward. You said in your message that you were already aware of the invasion. How? The attacks only began 3 days ago. Sarah set down her cup. Ambassador, do you know what we humans do when we are not trading goods or treating patients or building water systems? I know. We watch, we listen, we pay attention. We have been paying attention to the VTH Dominion for a very long time. We knew this invasion was coming before the VTH warlord had finished planning it. Then why didn't you warn us? Another delegate demanded. Why didn't you stop it before it began? Because you did not ask us to. Sarah's voice remained calm. We do not interfere unless we are invited. That is our rule. That is the promise we made 3,000 years ago when we stepped back from Galactic affairs, a promise that has caused billions of deaths, THRL said bitterly. Yes, Sarah did not flinch from the accusation. It has, and I am sorry for that, truly, but the alternative. She paused. Has the High Arbiter shown you Archive 7 yet? The unsealing was interrupted by your arrival, Voss said. But I was beginning to explain the Scourge War, what humanity became during that conflict. Good, you should see it. All of you, you need to understand what you are asking for before you ask for it. The delegates exchanged glances. Voss nodded to an aide who activated a display screen on the wall. Ancient footage began to play. This was recorded 3,247 years ago, Sarah said as the images flickered to life. The Scourge had been advancing through the galaxy for 4 decades. 17 civilizations had fallen. The machine intelligence consumed everything in its path. planets, stars. Entire clears throat, species reduced to raw materials for its expansion. The footage showed the scourge. It was hard to look at, vast structures that moved through space like living things, ships that were not quite ships, weapons that bent light and matter into impossible shapes where the scourge passed. Nothing remained. Your ancestors tried everything. Sarah continued. Diplomacy, weaponry, traps, alliances, nothing worked. The scourge did not negotiate. It did not stop, it simply consumed, and then it reached human space. The images shifted, a blue-green world appeared. Earth, beautiful and fragile and small. We were not a major power then. We had perhaps 200 colony worlds, a modest fleet. Nothing that should have mattered against a force that had destroyed empires spanning thousands of systems. But you stopped them, Voss said. Quietly, you did what no one else could do. We did more than stop them. Sarah's voice had changed. The warmth was gone. In its place was something colder. We did not fight the scourge. High Arbiter, we became something that could destroy it. And that is what you need to understand. New footage played. Human ships appearing from nowhere, not emerging from hyperspace lanes, but simply existing where they had not existed a moment before. The ships were dark, wrong. They moved in ways that hurt to watch. We discovered things during the war, technologies that should not exist, weapons that operated on principles your scientists would call impossible. We learned how to step outside the normal flow of space and time. We learned how to unmake matter at the atomic level. We learned how to do things that no species should ever learn. The footage showed a scourge formation, hundreds of their massive ships. Then in an instant they were gone. Not Clear's throat, destroyed, not disabled, simply gone, as if they had never existed at all. We hunted the scourge for 11 years across 3 galaxies. We did not stop when they tried to flee. We did not stop when they tried to surrender. We could not stop. We had become something that could only move forward, could only destroy, could only hunt. Sarah's hands were trembling slightly. Do you know how many scourge units existed at the war's peak? Approximately 40 trillion. Do you know how many existed when we were finished? No one answered. 0. We did not defeat the scourge. We did not drive them back. We erased them from existence. Completely, utterly, every single one. The footage ended. The screen went dark. And then Sarah said quietly, we looked at ourselves, at what we had become, at the things we had done, and we felt horror. You saved the galaxy, THR whispered. You should have felt pride. We felt pride too, and that was what frightened us most. Sarah met THR's eyes. We had become perfect killers, perfect hunters. We had learned to enjoy it. When the scourge was gone, some of us wondered what else we could hunt, what else we could destroy, what else we could become. She looked away. We saw the path we were on. We saw where it led, and we made a choice to step back. Voss said, to dismantle your fleets, to become this. He gestured at the 3 humans in their simple clothes, to become something else, something better. We took our ships and our weapons and our terrible knowledge, and we put them to sleep. We spread across the galaxy as traders and doctors and teachers. We chose kindness over power. We chose mercy over strength. We chose to forget what we could be. But you did not truly forget, Marcus said. He had been silent throughout the presentation, but now he spoke. His voice was soft, sad. We Cannot forget, it is always there inside. Us waiting, every human carries it, Yuki. Added, the memory of what we became. The knowledge of what we could become. Again, we spend our lives building. Healing, helping. We do it because we must, because every act of kindness pushes the darkness a little further. Down Sarah stood. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Ambassador THRL, you asked us to help. You fight the bait, we can do that, we can end their invasion in hours, we can. Save your people, free the occupied worlds, bring the warlord to justice. But you need to understand what you are asking. I'm asking you to save my people. No, Sarah turned back to face her. You are asking us to wake up, you are asking us to remember, you are asking us to become, even for a moment, the thing we spent 3,000 years trying not to be. She walked back to the table and placed her hands flat on its surface. So I need you to tell me, Ambassador, is there truly no other way? Have you exhausted every alternative? Is this the only option left? THRL thought of her home world, the cities burning, the children screaming, the bodies floating in the void. She thought of the reports flooding in every hour. More dead, more worlds falling, more atrocities committed by the VTH in their march of conquest. There is no other way, she said. I have nothing left but this. Sarah closed her eyes. When she opened them again, something had changed. Behind them, something old, something patient, something that had been sleeping for a very long time. Then we will help you. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. It looked like a coin, simple, unassuming. But remember this moment, Ambassador. Remember that you asked for this. Remember that we tried to give you another choice. She raised the device to her lips. This is Coordinator Chen. Wake them up. Somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, lights began to flicker on. Ships that had slept for 3,000 years stirred. Systems that had been dormant since before the Karathi had discovered fire powered up, and in their sleeping chambers, humans who had waited millennia for this call opened their eyes. The kindness was ending. The hunters were waking, and the galaxy would never be the same. The next 48 hours passed in a strange haze of waiting. The human delegation remained on the council station, but something had shifted in how they were treated. Before the message, delegates had watched them with curiosity and confusion. Now they watched with something closer to awe or fear. It was hard to tell the difference. Sarah Chen spent most of her time in the station's public areas. She visited the gardens, admired the artwork, asked questions about the different species she encountered. She was genuinely interested in everything. This seemed to disturb the council members more than anything else. How can you be so calm? Ambassador THRL finally asked her. They sat together in a small cafe overlooking the station's central atrium. Below them, thousands of beings went about their daily routines, most unaware of the crisis unfolding in the chambers above. You just activated some kind of ancient military force. You should be preparing for war. Instead, you are eating pastries. Sarah smiled and took another bite of the sweet bread she had ordered. It was not particularly good, but she appreciated the gesture of normally, what would you have me do? Ambassador, pace back and forth, issue dramatic orders. She shook her head. Wheels are already in motion. My job now is to wait, to observe, to make sure that when the time comes, we do exactly What needs to be done? Nothing more. Nothing less. How long until your forces arrive? They are already arriving. They have been arriving since I made the call. You just cannot see them yet. THRL looked out the window at the stars. She saw nothing unusual, just the normal traffic of ships coming and going. From the station, where are they hiding? Everywhere, nowhere, the space between. Moment, Sarah set down her pastry. Do you know what the hardest part of the Scourge War was, Ambassador? It was not the fighting. We adapted to that quickly. Humans are very good at adapting. The hardest part was stopping. I do not understand. When you spend years becoming the perfect predator, when you reshape your entire society around the hunt, when every thought and dream and hope becomes focused on destroying your enemy. Sarah's voice grew distant. Stopping is almost impossible. The momentum carries you forward even when there is nothing left to hunt. But you did stop. We did, and it nearly destroyed us. Sarah turned to face THRL directly. After the Scourge was gone, there were humans who did not want to stop, who could not stop. They looked around for new enemies, new threats, new things to hunt. Some of them decided that the other species of the galaxy were threats, that we should continue our expansion, continue our perfection of warfare, continue until nothing could ever threaten us again. THRL felt cold. What happened to them? We stopped them, those of us who still remembered what kindness felt like, those of us who could still see the line between protection and conquest. We fought our own kind to prevent them from becoming the next Scourge. Sarah's hands were tight around her cup. It was the worst war in human history, not because of the casualties, because we were fighting ourselves, because we had to destroy the part of us that had saved the galaxy. How did you win? We remembered why we had fought in the first place, not for territory, not for power, not for survival. We fought because we loved, because we wanted to protect the things that mattered, the people who could not protect themselves, the beautiful, fragile, wonderful diversity of life across the stars. Sarah smiled sadly. Love won barely, and we swore that we would never let ourselves forget again. The cafe was quiet for a moment. Around them, beings of a dozen species ate their meals and discussed their problems, unaware of the weight of history being shared at the small table by the window. This is why you stepped back, THRL said slowly. Not because you were weak, because you were too strong. We were not just too strong, we were too good at being strong. We found that we had no limit, no point where we would stop on our own, no internal break that said enough. Left unchecked, we would have continued until we had conquered everything, and then we would have started fighting each other. And then she shrugged. Extinction, our own or everyone else's, it was the only possible ending. So you chose a different ending. We chose to try every day, every generation. We chose to remember what we could become and to deliberately not become it. We built a civilization focused on kindness, because kindness is the only thing that keeps us human. And alert chimed on thrills. Communicator, she checked it and her face went pale. The VATH have taken 3 more systems. They are broadcasting a message. Sarah nodded. Calmly. Play it. The holographic display flickered to life. Warlord Kree appeared. Massive and brutal, his scarred face twisted in a smile of contempt. Behind him, prisoners were being led to execution platforms. I have heard that The council has called for help, Cree said, his voice dripping with mockery. They have sent for the humans, the traders, the doctors, the soft little creatures who build water pumps for savages. He laughed, a deep, cruel sound. I am so frightened. Look how I tremble. The camera panned to show the prisoners. Thousands of them, Karathi Meldrin. Others, they were being forced to kneel. This is my answer to your human friends. Cree continued, this is what happens to those who oppose the Dominion. Watch carefully, little traitors, learn what real power looks like. The executions began. THRL looked away, tears streaming down her face. Sarah did not look away. She watched every second of it. Her expression did not change. When it was over, Cree leaned toward the camera. Come, humans, come and save your precious council. I will enjoy crushing you beneath my boot. The broadcast ended. THRL was shaking with grief, with rage, with helplessness. Monsters, she whispered. They are monsters. Yes, Sarah said quietly. They are. How can you be so calm? They just murdered 10,000 people. Sarah finally looked away from the darkened display. Her eyes found thrills in what the ambassador saw there made her breath catch in her throat. Sarah Chen's eyes were ancient, old beyond counting. They held depths of sorrow and fury and something else, something that made thrill want to run and hide and never stop running. I am calm, Sarah said softly, because if I allow myself to feel what I actually feel right now, I will not be able to control what happens next, and control. Ambassador is the only thing standing between the vast Dominion in complete annihilation. Would that be so wrong after what they just did? Ask me again in a week when you have seen what we can do, when you have witnessed the full measure of human capability. Then tell me if complete annihilation is something the galaxy should wish for. Sarah stood. I need to speak with my colleagues. The time for waiting is almost over. She left Thrill alone in the cafe, staring out at the stars. 3 hours later, humanity broadcast its response. It played on every channel, every frequency, every display screen across the galaxy. A simple message from 3 ordinary-looking humans standing in a small room. To the VTH Dominion, Sarah Chen said. Her voice was calm, pleasant. Even, you have 6 hours to begin full withdrawal from all occupied territories. You will release all prisoners unharmed. You will surrender your military command structure for trial. This is not a negotiation. There will be no second warning. Marcus Webb stepped forward. Your forces will not be harmed if they comply. Your civilians will not be touched. Your worlds will remain intact. We have no interest in conquest or revenge. We are interested only in ending this conflict with minimum loss of life. Dr. Yuki Tanaka spoke last, but understand this clearly. If you do not comply, we will end this conflict anyway. The only question is, how many of your people die before it is over? That choice is yours. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, beings who had seen the Archive 7 footage held their breath. Those who had not seen it laughed at the audacity of 3 unarmed humans threatening the largest military force in known space. Warlord Cree broadcast his response. Within minutes, he was still laughing. 6 hours? I will give you 6 hours to watch me burn another world. Then I will come for you personally, human. I will make your death last for days. Sarah Chen watched the response in silence. When it ended, she turned to Her colleagues, he chose poorly, she said simply. Marcus nodded. They usually do. Then let us remind the galaxy why they should not have forgotten us. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, vast shapes began to move. Ships that had slept for 3,000 years turned their attention toward the VTH Dominion, and in their depths, humans who had spent millennia learning to be kind, prepared to remember how to be something else entirely. The 6 hours began to count down. The transformation began quietly, so quietly that most of the galaxy did not notice until it was nearly complete. On a remote trading station in the outer rim, a human merchant named David Park excused himself from a negotiation. He apologized to his business partners, explaining that a family emergency required his immediate attention. He left his goods, his contracts, and his carefully built reputation behind. He walked to the docking bay where his small cargo ship waited. The ship looked ordinary, battered, old, the kind of vessel a struggling trader might own. Clear his throat, David entered it alone and sealed the door. Inside, he pressed his hand to a panel that had not existed a moment before. The cargo ship shimmered and changed. Its hull darkened, its dimensions shifted in ways that made no sense to normal physics. Where a cargo ship had been, something else now waited. This scene repeated itself across the galaxy. On medical stations, human doctors finished their current patients and handed their duties to colleagues. On construction sites, human engineers completed their tasks and stepped away from their projects. On colony worlds and space stations and ships of every size, humans stopped what they were doing and moved toward vessels that should not exist. The council began receiving reports within an hour, confused messages from 1,000 different sources. The human trader is gone. The human teacher has left. The human mechanic has disappeared. In every case, the humans had been polite, professional. They had made sure their work would not suffer from their absence. They had simply walked away from lives they had built over decades. And then the ships began appearing. High Orbiter Voss stood in the council's command center, watching the displays. With growing horror, reports flooded in from across known space. Human vessels were materializing everywhere, not traveling through hyperspace lanes, not approaching through normal space, simply appearing as if they had always been there, just invisible. How many? Someone asked. The sensor operator's voice trembled. We have confirmed over 200,000 vessels so far. The number is still climbing. That is impossible. Human records show a total population of 43 million across all known space. They cannot have 200,000 ships. Our records are wrong, Voss said quietly, or incomplete, or perhaps humans have been living among us in numbers we never suspected. He watched another cluster of ships flicker into existence near a major trading hub. They have been here all along, watching, waiting, and we never saw them. Ambassador THRL stood beside him. She had not slept since the human delegation had arrived. She was not sure she would ever sleep peacefully again. Where did they all come from? She asked. Everywhere. Nowhere, Sarah Chen's voice came from behind them. She had entered the command center without anyone noticing. We are very good at hiding, Ambassador. 3,000 years of practice. How many of you are there? Really? Sarah smiled. It did not reach her eyes. Enough. The countdown timer on the main display showed 47 minutes remaining, 47 minutes. Until the human ultimatum expired, 47 minutes until something unprecedented happened in VTH-controlled space. Warlord Kree had assembled his full armada, over 100,000 warships, the largest military force in galactic history. He had positioned them in a defensive formation around his flagship, daring the humans to attack. His sensors showed no human ships approaching. This pleased him. The humans were cowards. Their ultimatum had been a bluff. They would back down and he would continue his conquest, and the galaxy would learn that the VTH Dominion could not be threatened by soft traders and doctors. Then the countdown reached 0. Kree's tactical display flickered. When it cleared, human ships filled every corner of his screen. They had not approached. They had not traveled. They had simply appeared, hundreds of thousands of them, surrounding his armada like wolves surrounding a wounded animal. What is this? Kree demanded. How did they? Warlord, his tactical officer's voice was barely a whisper. They are not moving, they are just waiting. Communication request appeared. Kree accepted it, his pride refusing to show the fear that was beginning to creep into his heart. Sarah Chen's face appeared on his screen. She was sitting in a simple chair, a cup of coffee in her hands, looking for all the world like she was having a casual conversation. Warlord Kree, your 6 hours have expired. I notice your forces have not begun withdrawing. I am going to give you one more chance to reconsider. Kree laughed. It sounded forced even to his own ears. Your ships are impressive. Human, but they do nothing. They do not fire. They do not advance. Perhaps they are as soft as you are. They are waiting for your answer. Will you withdraw? I will destroy you, all of you. Your ships, your worlds, your entire pathetic species. He turned to his officers. All ships open fire. The VTH Armada unleashed everything it had: plasma cannons, nuclear missiles, gravity weapons, antimatter warheads, a storm of destruction that would have shattered a planet washed over the human fleet. It did nothing. The human ships did not evade. They did not deploy shields. They simply sat there as the VTH weapons passed through them like light through water, as if the ships were not entirely real, as if they existed in some space that vet weapons could not reach. What? Kree stared at his display. What are you? Sarah Chen sipped her coffee. We are the answer to a question no one should have asked. We are what happens when a species decides that nothing will ever threaten them again. We spent 3,000 years trying not to be this. You have reminded us why we became it in the first place. She set down her cup. You chose poorly, Warlord. Now watch what happens. The human ships moved, not like ships, like thoughts, like intentions given form. One moment they were there, the next they were everywhere, and wherever they went, VTH ships ceased to exist. But they did not explode. They did not burn. They simply stopped being weapons. A dreadnaught's weapon systems vanished, replaced by empty space. A carrier's hangar bays sealed themselves shut, their fighters unable to launch, and assault cruisers' engines disappeared, leaving it drifting helplessly. The human ships were not destroying the bait fleet. They were editing it, removing the capacity for violence while leaving the ships themselves intact. It was surgical, precise, impossible. On the display screens of every council world, the battle played out in real time. Beings across the galaxy watched as the most powerful military force in known space was systematically disarmed, not defeated, not destroyed, disarmed. Within 30 minutes it was over. 100,000 vet warships floated in space completely helpless. Their crews were alive. Their life support functioned, but they had no weapons, no engines, no ability to fight. Sarah Chen's face appeared on every screen. Her voice was soft, gentle. Even attention, vet forces, your armada has been neutralized. No one has died. Your crews are safe. Surrender now and you will be treated fairly. Rescue ships are en route to collect your personnel. The vet commanders stared at their useless controls. Many were weeping, not from fear of death. They had been prepared for death. They had not been prepared for this, for complete and utter powerlessness, for the revelation that they had never been a threat at all. Warlord Kree was dragged from his crippled flagship by human soldiers. They were not rough with him. They did not beat him or mock him. They simply took him efficiently and without drama and brought him before Sarah Chen. She was still holding her coffee cup. Why am I alive? Kree demanded. His voice was raw, broken. Why didn't you just kill me? Because killing you was never the point. Sarah looked at him with something that might have been pity. You murdered 10,000 prisoners to show your strength. You burned worlds and slaughtered innocents to prove you could not be challenged. And in 30 minutes we took everything from you without spilling a single drop of blood. She leaned closer. You are going to live. Warlord, you are going to watch as we undo everything you built. You are going to see your empire dismantled, your victims freed, your legacy erased, and you are going to spend the rest of your very long life knowing that you never mattered, that all your cruelty, all your power, all your ambition meant nothing against people who simply chose not to kill you. She straightened. That is your punishment, not death. Life, endless, powerless, meaningless. Life. CH stared at her. For the first time in his existence, he understood true fear, not fear of pain, not fear of death, fear of irrelevance. The humans had not just defeated him, they had shown him that he had never been relevant at all, and that he realized was far worse than any death could be. The galaxy held its breath in the days following the disarmament of the VTH Armada. Everyone waited to see what humanity would do with its power. Every species, every world, every government watched and wondered if they would be next. Conquest would have made sense. Humanity had just demonstrated capabilities that made them untouchable. They could take whatever they wanted. They could reshape civilization to suit their desires. They could rule the galaxy with absolute authority. Instead, they started rebuilding human ships spread across the occupied territories. But they did not claim the worlds for themselves. They brought supplies, medical equipment, construction, clear's throat materials. They landed on shattered planets and began helping survivors dig out from the rubble. Human doctors treated the wounded. Human engineers repaired damaged infrastructure. Human counselors sat with traumatized children and helped them process what they had experienced. On the Karathi home world, Ambassador THRL watched human volunteers work alongside her people. They asked nothing in return. They made no demands. They simply helped. I do not understand, she told Sarah Chen. They stood on a balcony overlooking what had once been a beautiful city. Now it was mostly ruins. Human and Karathi workers moved through The streets below, clearing debris. Searching for survivors you could take. Everything you could make us all your servants. Why are you helping us? Instead, Sarah watched a human medic tend to a wounded Karathy child. The medic was young. She could not have been more than 25. She was gentle with the child, speaking softly, making him laugh. Despite his injuries, do you see that woman? Sarah asked. Her name is Lisa. She was born on a colony world in the Outer Rim. She spent her entire life training to be a doctor. She has never hurt anyone. She has never wanted to hurt anyone. She believes that every life has value, that every being deserves care and compassion. She seems kind. She is kind, and she is also capable of things that would give you nightmares for the rest of your life. Sarah turned to face Thrill. Every human is both. We are all gentle and terrible. We all carry the capacity for infinite kindness and infinite cruelty. The difference between Lisa the healer and Lisa the hunter is just a choice. Choice we make every single moment of every single day, and you choose kindness. We choose to try. That is all we can do. We choose to wake up each morning and be good. We choose to help. Instead of harm, we choose to build. Instead of destroy, not because it is easy, because it is the only way to stay human. THRL was quiet for a long moment. Below them, Lisa lifted the Karathy child and carried him toward a medical transport. The child was laughing now, his pain forgotten in the presence of someone who cared. What happens now? Thrill asked. With the VTH, with their empire, their military has been neutralized. Their leadership will face justice, not our justice, yours. We will not be executioners. The species they wronged will decide their fate, and their people, the ordinary Veth who had no part in the invasion, they will be given choices. They can rebuild their society under whatever government they choose, as long as they reject conquest and aggression. They can join the broader galactic community as equals, or they can remain isolated until they decide to change. Sarah shrugged. We are not interested in punishment. We are interested in preventing future harm. You could just destroy them. Make sure they never threaten anyone again. We could, but what would that make us? Sarah met THRL's eyes. Ambassador, I told you about the war we fought against ourselves after the scourge was gone. About the humans who wanted to continue to conquer, to destroy all possible threats. Do you know what argument they made? THRL shook her head. They said it was safer. They said that if we destroyed everyone who might someday oppose us, we would never have to fight again. We would be secure, protected, safe forever. Sarah's voice grew heavy. And they were right. We could have done that. We could have become the only power in the galaxy. We could have erased every potential enemy before they even knew we existed. Why didn't you? Because safety is not the same as goodness. Because a universe where we are the only power is a universe where we have killed everyone else. Because the only way to truly protect everything we love is to become something that cannot love at all. She looked out over the ruined city, the humans who wanted eternal security through destruction were not wrong about what was possible. They were wrong about what was worth living for. A message alert chimed. Sarah checked it and nodded. Come with me. There is something I want to show you. They traveled to a small moon at the edge of the Karathy system. It was unremarkable. Gray rock, no atmosphere, no obvious value. but as their shuttle. Approach THRL saw structures. Emerging from the surface, a complex. Built into the stone itself, what is? This place, a memorial. We built it 3,000 years ago, after the Scourge War. After our civil conflict, when we decided to step back from the galaxy and become something else, Sarah landed the shuttle near the entrance. Every human knows this place exists, very few have ever visited. They walked through the entrance into a vast underground chamber. The walls were covered with names, millions of names, billions more than Thrill could comprehend. These are not our casualties, Sarah said softly. These are our victims. Every being we killed during the Scourge War, every life we ended, whether Scourge or collateral or accidental, we recorded every single one. THRL stared at the endless walls of names. The weight of it pressed down on her. Why would you do this? Why keep such a terrible record? Because we must never forget what we are capable of, because the moment we stop seeing our victims as individuals, as names, as lives that mattered, is the moment we become the thing we fought against. Sarah touched the wall gently. Every human child learns about this memorial. Every human adult carries its weight. We remember what we did so that we never do it again. They walked deeper into the complex. The names continued seemingly endless, a testament to destruction on a scale that defied comprehension. I understand now, THRL said finally. Why you stepped back, why you hid, why you tried so hard to be kind. She stopped and faced Sarah. You are not afraid of being destroyed. You are afraid of being what you were. Every day, every moment, the fear never goes away. Sarah smiled sadly, but it helps. It reminds us why we must keep choosing, why every act of kindness matters, why every life saved is a victory against the darkness inside us. They returned to the surface, to the stars, to a galaxy that was slowly beginning to heal. In the months that followed, humanity did what it had always done. It helped. Human volunteers remained on devastated worlds long after the crisis was officially over. Human ships carried supplies to remote communities. Human teachers opened schools for orphan children. Human doctors trained local healers so that their skills would remain long after they left. The Galactic Council offered humanity a seat at their table, a voice in their deliberations, power to match their obvious capability. Humanity declined. We do not need a seat, Sarah explained to the assembled council. We need neighbors. We need partners. We need a galaxy where every species has a voice, where every world has value, where power is shared rather than hoarded. If we took your seat, if we accepted your power, we would become what we fear, a dominant force that others must defer to, a presence that shapes everything simply by existing. Then what do you want? High Arbiter Voss asked. Something smaller, an embassy, a trade delegation, a few schools where our teachers can share knowledge and learn in return. We want to be part of your civilization, not Clear's throat. Above it, after everything you have done, everything you are capable of, you want to be ordinary. Sarah laughed. It was a warm sound, genuine, human. We have never been ordinary, High Arbiter. We never will be, but we can be good. And being good starts with recognizing that power alone is not enough, that capability must be tempered with humility, that the strongest choice is often the choice to be gentle. She stood and addressed the full council. 3,000 years ago, we saved this galaxy and nearly lost ourselves in the process. We stepped back because we had to. We became traders and doctors and teachers because that was the only way to remember who we wanted to be. She looked around at the hundreds of species watching her, but something has changed. You built something wonderful while we were watching. You created a community of worlds that, for all its flaws, tries to pursue peace. You proved that it is possible to be diverse and still be united. You showed us that we do not have to carry this burden alone. She smiled. So we are not stepping back this time. We are stepping forward, not as protectors or rulers or guardians, as friends, as partners, as one voice among many, contributing what we can, learning what we must, and trusting that together we can build something better than any of us could build alone. The council chamber was silent. Then slowly delegates began to rise, one by one. They stood in acknowledgement of the gift humanity was offering, not power, not protection, partnership. Ambassador THRL was the first to cross the chamber. She stood before Sarah Chen and extended her hand in the human gesture of friendship. Thank you, she said, simply, for helping us, for trusting us, for choosing to be kind. Sarah took her hand and held it gently. Thank you for asking, for reminding us that we cannot hide forever, for showing us that the galaxy is worth rejoining. They stood there for a moment, two beings from different worlds, representing something new, something hopeful. Years passed. Humanity integrated slowly into galactic civilization. Human settlements appeared on dozens of worlds, and alien settlements appeared on human worlds. Trade flourished, knowledge was shared. Friendships formed across the boundaries of species. The hidden fleets remained hidden. The Clear's throat, ancient ships slept in the darkness between stars, maintained by crews who hoped they would never be needed again. They were a reminder, a safeguard, a promise that if the galaxy ever faced another scourge, another existential threat, humanity would be ready. But the crews no longer dreamed of battle. They dreamed of gardens, of children laughing, of a future where their terrible capabilities would rust into memory and eventually be forgotten entirely. On a small colony world in the Outer Rim, a young alien child asked her human teacher why humans were always so nice. The teacher thought for a long time before answering. She was old now, old enough to remember when the choice had been harder, old enough to carry the weight of what her species had been. We are kind, she said finally, because we know what we could be instead, and every single day we choose not to be. The child considered this. Is it hard? Choosing every day. Sometimes, but it gets easier, and the more of us who choose, the easier it becomes for everyone. She smiled and ruffled the child's fur. Now would you like to hear a story about a galaxy that was afraid, and the strange creatures who chose to help them anyway? The child nodded eagerly. The teacher began to speak, and across the endless stars, humanity continued to make its choice. Every day, every moment, forever, they chose to be kind.